welcome back. I'm so glad to have you all here today. The word PBM has been something that's been in people's minds quite a bit. We hear about it in the marketplace. Most consumers don't even know what a PBM is, yet they play an outsized role in our healthcare spend. And PharmaCentra recently announced a really neat partnership with a company called Cervey. And as we're trying to understand the PBM and pharmacy benefit manager business, I couldn't think of a better guest to have on our show than Andrew Krull, who's a sales executive of Cervey, and he's going to help us deconstruct what is a PBM, why are we even having this discussion, and how important they are in our healthcare system. Andrew, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking time today to chat with us.
Oh, hey, Dan, and thanks for inviting Survey to participate in your fireside chat. Obviously, we look forward to our partnership going forward, and obviously look forward to the conversation we're going to have today about PBMs and how technology plays a role within the PBM industry.
Great. Let's start at 30,000 feet. So help us understand what is a PBM and in the healthcare landscape, the role that adjudication and survey plays and the technology in that process. Help us understand the plumbing or the piping of PBMs and how this stuff works.
Well, that's a great question, Dan. And from a high level, PBMs sit at the intersections of payers, pharmacies, manufacturers, and members to administer drug coverage. At their best, PBMs are meant to control costs, ensure access, and apply clinical intent consistently at the point of sale. Recent issues in the market friction over the time, the PBM market has become highly consolidated with a small number of vertically integrated payers controlling the industry landscape. That consolidation has led to conflicts of interest, very limited transparency into pricing and decision logic, and really a one-size-fits-all benefit designs that don't work for every employer, health system, or plan sponsor. So we have a lot of the market disruptors emerging. In response, we've seen growth in the small to mid-sized PBMs that prioritize the transparency, offer more custom benefit designs, and really align incentives more closely with plan sponsors and members. These PBMs aren't trying to outscale incumbents; they're trying to out execute and out align them. And when you look at what I just mentioned about the PBMs, at the core of it all is adjudication and where survey would fit in. Claims adjudication is the real-time decision-making process that occurs when a prescription is submitted at the pharmacy counter. So almost instantly, the adjudication system must verify the eligibility, check for the formulary and benefit rules, and we apply pricing, discounts, and pharmacy reimbursement logic, calculate the member's out-of-pocket, approve or reject a claim. So, if you look at legacy
That
adjudication.
all happens. That all happens instantaneously, like in nanoseconds. That's the thing that blows me away.
And there's less than a second, absolutely. I think there's 0.01 seconds. It's a very quick transaction. When you look at legacy adjudication platforms were built for scale and standardization for the larger PBMs that have been dominating the market for a long time now, not for flexibility or transparency. And certainly some of the nuances that have entered the market today. So making them kind of a poor fit for these newer PBM models. The disruptor PBMs need adjudication platforms that are highly configurable, able to move and evolve quickly as regulatory and market pressures change. And, if you look at it from the independent PBM agnostic adjudication platform, it matters because it avoids those embedded conflicts of interest. It allows those PBMs to truly own their benefit logic and pricing strategy. And it truly supports innovation without forcing PBMs into predefined models. So if you look at it, the big picture takeaway is there's been a lot of recent rise of transparent small to mid-sized PBMs, but a modern, flexible adjudication platform makes it all possible for these PBMs to exist and compete. So
They couldn't exist if you didn't have that backbone, that plumbing to help it move. Yeah.
100%.
I think the word transparent is the thing that strikes me as I look at the small and medium-sized PBMs as they emerge. The word transparent is, you probably do a word count on everybody's webpage, and that's probably the number one word count for everything. And that transparency, I think, is what defines this small and mid-market opportunity that we're talking about. Help me understand as we talk about the small and mid-market, because the small and mid-market is going to be different than the big guys. But help me understand the most misunderstood aspects of PBMs, because I think that's where that disconnect is between how a large legacy PBM operates and how a small, medium, mid-market PBM operates. From your vantage point, what is the most misunderstood aspects of PBMs, and how does technology clarify and improve how a PBM can operate?
Dan, that's a great question. And the core misconception, and it's really the most common misunderstanding, is that PBMs are simply unnecessary middlemen that add cost without delivering value. That perception is largely driven by legacy PBM models that offer limited transparency into the pricing, incentives and decision making. So, but how did that misconception form? Well, when plan sponsors and members can't clearly see why a drug is covered or excluded, or how pricing and cost sharing are determined, and really where the dollars flow across the pharmacy benefit, it creates mistrust and the assumption that value isn't being delivered. So what PBMs actually do when operating transparently is, I think, the bigger question. And a transparent PBM can clearly demonstrate its role in managing the drug spend through benefit and formulary strategy. And really what I mean by that is not chasing the rebate. Instead of providing the clinical decisions for where that drug falls on the formulary and what the true net cost is. Applying clinical and utilization controls consistently and where there is value. That's a big misconception. And ensuring access while balancing affordability. Having access to the data is key. At Cervey, we don't hold our customers' data hostage, which allows them to give that transparency to their customers and have the ability to demonstrate everything I just mentioned. So, in these models, the PBM is not a middleman. It's an administrator and steward of the pharmacy benefit. So if you look at kind of that core misconception, how it was formed, it's kind of reforming the narrative, right?
Right.
The problem historically hasn't been the existence of PBMs, but the lack of visibility into their operations. When PBMs operate with transparency and alignment, their value becomes clear. They turn complex pharmacy benefits into predictable, manageable outcomes for plan sponsors and members. So I think that's kind of where that misconception and just, reforming the narrative.
Yeah, I agree with you. The industry pressures are palpable. When you have the executive branch talking about eliminating PBMs altogether, I think the industry needs to sit up and take notice and say, hey, there's more than one narrative here. And I think that's hopefully what we're trying to accomplish today as well. And that because of these industry pressures, technology can play an outsized role in helping manage a lot of these industry pressures that we'll be talking about in a little bit. Help us understand how technology can help us drive efficiencies and cost savings ultimately to members.
100%. I mean, when you look at, the industry pressures in general, PBMs are navigating simultaneous pressures from rising drug costs and increased regulatory scrutiny and heightened expectations for transparency and service. So, these pressures are pushing PBMs to adopt technology strategies that prioritize, faster adaptability to the regulatory and market changes. I mean, I think if you open up the browser today on your computer, you'll find that there's probably a new regulatory change that may be coming down the pipeline. So, greater visibility into the pricing and benefit decisions and really being able to configure those benefit designs rather than static one size fits all models. So, as a result, PBMs are increasingly valuing technology that enables control and clarity allowing them to respond quickly without sacrificing accuracy and compliance. So
I really think the technology that I see is in plan design and in the customizable nature of the way a PBM can save money and deliver value. And that customization is key to success in helping change that narrative.
100%.
My view.
100%. I agree.
The other industry pressures are obviously you touched on a little bit, but the biologics and the GLPs is putting tremendous pressure on PBMs. Help us understand how your systems and the industry in general can help manage those costs and rise to the occasion of managing expectations of patients.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at it now, specialty drugs represent a huge disproportionate share of pharmacy spend, driven by those high cost of therapies, complex distribution models, and stricter utilization controls. So if you look at it from the drugs that you mentioned, the GLP-1s and everything, it's starting to put pressures on plan sponsors. And so that shift increases the technology requirements that PBMs rely on, more sophisticated pricing and reimbursement logics, the ability to support multiple sites of care. If you look at it from, I mentioned earlier, the bigger PBMs all own their own specialty pharmacies, which allows for them to control the distribution and the fulfillment of those drugs, where the small and mid-sized prioritize price and adherence. So I think that's a big one as well. And the ability to support clinical edits, the site of care rules and the specialty specific benefit designs is important. And one of the other areas is the ability to account for the copay assistance and manufacturers assistance programs that are out there when available, and then accurately tracking of those for accumulators and limits and outcomes. So for the adjudication system, specialty growth reinforces the need for the flexible rules-based engines that can like Cervey, that can manage the complexity without relying on manual workarounds.
So that's the second word that keeps popping up: transparency. The next word is flexibility, because I think that's the large group employers. That's really what they're looking for more than anything else, is the ability to look at certain spending trends and say, hey, we need to adjust because we need to make changes to our plan. And in a traditional legacy, that's hard to do. But with these small and medium sized, it's literally a stroke of the key potentially.
Absolutely.
What are some of the future trends that we're looking at? Help us understand AI and automation and the role that could play, because obviously AI and automation are going to play a role in everything. Obviously I look at the adjudication systems now and I'm blown away by the speed of response, nanoseconds to get a response back for adjudication. And you look at it and say, gosh, what's next? What could happen next? Help me imagine what this world is going to look like in the world of PBMs and how that could help drive customer experience and cost.
That's a great question, and some people may think that this is an AI interview right now, right? So
I hope not. I hope I bring a little more real than that.
Exactly. But from a PBM and adjudication standpoint, the most practical AI and automation use cases are not about replacing core decision making, but about making existing processes more efficient, consistent, and explainable. First, AI can be applied to rule optimization and monitoring. PBMs manage thousands of pricing rules, benefit edits, and clinical configurations. Machine learning can help identify those patterns and overrides, reversals, manual interventions, helping teams refine rule sets over time and really reduce unnecessary denials and improve those first pass claims accuracy. So, that would be first. And then, second, automation has clear value in exception handling and workflows. So many PBM operations still rely on manual review for pricing discrepancies, eligibility mismatches or audit requests. So, automating those workflows and routing only true outliers to human review, that can significantly reduce administration burden and turnaround time. But the third thing, and AI supports faster, clearer audit and regulatory response. Instead of assembling data reactively. Intelligent systems can flag anomalies, track rule changes, and generate audit-ready documentation, tied directly to that adjudication logic. So that's especially important as these regulatory scrutiny increases. So,
Yeah,
the important,
I agree. The scrutiny is what I think gets most people nervous, and I think having that transparency, I think, is really the saving grace.
100%, and really the importance is that, AI shouldn't augment the adjudication and not obscure it. Any automated or AI assisted decision must remain transparent, configurable, and defensible. So that's the important part too. So the real benefit isn't flashy automation, it's improved operational efficiencies, better consistency at the point of claim and the ability to explain outcomes confidently to clients and regulatory. So, in short, when applied thoughtfully, I think AI and automation help PBM scale complexity without scaling headcount and while strengthening accuracy, compliance, and really trust. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's look in the future. It's 3 to 5 years ahead. It's year 2030. Say that out loud. I mean, in this political environment, it's very hard to predict out certain things because, as we know, it's very hard to predict politics and where the political winds blow. But there are certain things that are constants that we can predict. What do you predict? What do you think the industry looks like in 2030?
that's a great question. If I had the magic 8 ball, I'd look into it so that Cervey would be ready for it, and trust me, I know we will be. But looking ahead, that the biggest shift in the PBM space will be how much responsibility moves down to the adjudication layer. Really, adjudication is no longer just about approving or rejecting a claim. It's becoming the system of record for pricing, benefit design, and regulatory compliance. So, first there'll be a strong push toward the explainable real-time decisions that PBMs, employers, and regulators will expect to see exactly which pricing rules, benefit edits, and clinical criteria were applied to each claim and why. So, the systems that can surface that logic instantly, not weeks, will become a standard. So, secondly, we'll continue to see PBMs move away from rigid all-in-one platforms toward, modular API-driven architecture. So this will allow PBMs to plug in different pricing models, clinical programs, or really partner solutions, which is, there's a lot of partner solutions around. You mentioned GLP-1s earlier. There's a lot of standalone programs that people are bolting on to address those. But without rebuilding their core system every time requirements change. So that flexibility and speed will matter as much as scale. And then I think the third will be the regulatory compliance will be embedded directly into that logic. So as state and federal oversight increases, PBMs will rely less on the post adjudication audits and more up on the upfront controls that enforce rules automatically. So reducing those operational risks and administrative burdens. And I believe finally, I think the adjudication data will be used strategically. Advanced analytics and automation will help the PBMs model benefit changes, identify inefficiency and refine rules over time. Turning the adjudication from a cost center into a source of insight and competitive advantage. So, over the next 3 to 5
So
years,
really accomplishing the vision, the original vision of PBMs.
exactly. I think they'll evolve from a transaction engine to a core transparency, compliant decision support platform for the ecosystem. So, I think the PBM industry is more going to be a plug and play down the road because those PBMs that are stuck with this is the way we do business, they're going to probably be left for more and more of the mid-sized PBMs and those that are flexible and willing to partner with solutions that are helping to control the cost, because I think cost is going to be the driver of change.
That's what
in the
drives
next
everything.
3 to
That's
5
why the
years.
change is happening is cost. And I'm witnessing firsthand as a partner with Cervey the tremendous costs that are able to be found with the right partner. Staggering, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's going to drive the business. At the end of the day, a business is going to look at how much money did you save me and how much money did you cost me. It's
100%.
not that complicated.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I agree.
no, we talked about a lot of complicated things, but transparency, flexibility, and cost, and that's the equation at the end of the puzzle. So.
I 100%. You obviously why we enjoy being on this is because of your knowledge of where it is as well.
Well, Andrew, thank you. This has been really insightful and helpful, and I hope our audience can take something away and learn something neat about the PBM business. I love the way that Cervey is helping to reinvent the PBM industry, and I think we all agree that the PBM industry needs reinventing. And at the end of the day, it's about flexibility, transparency, and cost savings. So, Andrew, thank you very much again. It's been wonderful having you on our show.
Dan, thank you, and thank you to PharmaCentra for allowing us to share some of our insight today.